On today's show, we have Kyle Sandy from sandyspiel.com joining us here on the Fan Show today to talk about some local and national college hoops. Welcome back to the Fan Show. In case you're curious what the Fan Show is, we are a podcast with fans, favoritefan.com. We are a website that is all about the fan experience, so be sure to check out that website after you listen to this podcast. I'm Alex Berger, and today on our show we're having Kyle Sandy from sandyspiel.com, and Kyle is just a great guy that we'd like to have on the show to talk about college basketball, and he gives really good insight onto what's going on in college basketball. Also, too, gives a lot of great insight on what's going on with the recruiting game in college basketball, because right now high school basketball in the state of Georgia is Kyle's forte. And if you're not aware about high school basketball recruiting inside the state of Georgia, Georgia is just a mecca, a plethora of talent that comes through the state of Georgia when it comes to basketball. And a lot of guys actually go on and make careers in the NBA. But yeah, a lot of college basketball programs come raid the state of Georgia, and Kyle's gonna explain all about when we have him on. But glad that you're with us today. I'm Alex Berger, and just in a few minutes we're gonna have Kyle Sandy on. But first, you probably heard this already if you're a Georgia fan, and this is a coach that I hate to see go, but this is pretty common during this time of year where you see a lot of different coaching changes, because usually December is for head coaches, and you see a lot of head coaches come and go. Now you're seeing a lot of assistants at different programs come and go, and right now the most recent assistant to leave a program is Shane Beamer. Shane Beamer was at the University of Georgia, was their tight ends and special teams coordinator. Now he is moving on to Oklahoma to be their assistant head coach to help Lincoln Riley out on special teams. So that is a promotion for Shane Beamer. And if the last name Beamer sounds familiar, he is Frank Beamer's son. And Frank Beamer, if you're not aware, is inducted into the Chick-fil-A College Hall of Fame. So he'll be doing a lot of stuff with that this year. I think that's interesting. The father is going to the Hall of Fame, and the son gets a promotion in his career. So congrats to both of them, but at the same time, I hate to see Shane go, because I was really excited to hear when Shane was going to be a part of Georgia's coaching staff when Kirby Smart put together his first staff together, and Shane was going to be a part of it because I knew that he did great things at South Carolina. When he was at South Carolina, it always seemed like that they were really competitive on special teams. They got blocks, or they returned kicks, and I was really excited to see that aggressive nature come to Athens, because that was something that in Athens that you didn't really see that much on special teams. But I feel like he was a key part of Georgia going on to the national championship because in key moments and key times, Georgia got big plays from their special teams unit in the SEC championship when they blocked that field goal, and also too in overtime in the Rose Bowl against Oklahoma. Ironically, that Georgia blocks a field goal and then puts them in a good position to score and get the win in the Rose Bowl. So, very sad to see Shane Beamer go, but I wish him the best of luck. At the same time, though, Kirby Smart's in a really interesting situation right now because just reading an article on DogNation.com about Shane Beamer leaving Athens and all the coaching turnover that's going on there in Athens, and you should definitely check it out. The article that I read was on DogNation.com, and it was by Seth Emerson. But Seth Emerson points out that Kevin Scher at the same time, the linebackers coach at Georgia, also got the defensive coordinator job at Tennessee, so he's going with his old boss, Jeremy Pruitt, up in Tennessee. And yes, that's another promotion as well. But you see this a lot with good teams that when a team has a successful season, that other teams that aren't doing well, other teams that are struggling, want to have that same success. So they'll go after the top dog's assistant, right? And right now, to give credit to Kirby Smart, Kirby Smart is one of the top dogs in college football. No pun intended there, but Kirby Smart right now is in an interesting situation, much like Nick Saban, who is trying to now hire a defensive coordinator. Already took care of hiring an offensive coordinator, so that I think that's pretty interesting. Nick Saban having to hire key positions in the coordinator positions on both sides of the ball. I don't think I've ever see that happening. It's either one or the other. It's usually not both. You either have to hire a new offensive coordinator or you have to hire a new defense coordinator. You don't have to replace both. But with Kirby now, let me just go through the openings at Georgia. Aaron Field. Now this isn't a coach, but he was part of the strength and conditioning staff, and that actually is very important as well to a football team. I don't think a lot of people realize that, but Aaron Field, he did have a really key part in the 2017 season, and if you're not sure who he is, he's the dude with the mustache, but look him up on Twitter. He's a good follow on Twitter. But anyways, he has left Athens to become the strength and conditioning coach in Kevin Scher's job with Danny Lanning from Memphis. But now he has to replace Shane Beamer, which I feel like is a bigger task than it's said and done, because right now Georgia has to keep the recruits happy that they got on the tight ends, because Georgia's got some 5 stars at tight ends, also some tight ends that are really highly ranked going into the 2019 class are looking at Georgia, and one of the selling points for the Georgia football team was having a coach like Shane Beamer there. So it's an interesting spot now that Georgia's in, but I feel confident in Kirby Smart. I feel like this is a big test for Kirby Smart as well. How do you replace a really good coach like Shane Beamer? He wasn't the main cog in the system, but he was a pretty important cog. It's not like replacing Mel Tucker. He'll probably have to do that down the road, and that'll be an interesting situation when that happens. But right now, he has some gaps on the coaching staff and support staff, and it's going to be really interesting to see how Georgia goes forward with this, and is there going to be any beats left off from the 2017 season going into the 2018 season, because it seemed like after the national championship, all the players were talking about, we're going to be back here next year. We're going to be back here next year. That's all you heard in the Georgia locker room and back there in San Francisco, of all places. But I don't think these changes that are going on in the coaching staff is going to really hurt them at all. Like I said before, this happens to all the good teams. You see it with Alabama. You see it with the New England Patriots. It's just something that the Dogs are going to have to overcome. But I don't think this is going to be a huge change at all.
Today on the Fan Show, we have a special guest joining us today. He is Kyle Sandy, and he runs his own website, sandyspiel.com. So be sure to check that out. I'll put the link to his website in the show description. Kyle, how are you doing today, man?
I am doing well. It's a busy time of the year with basketball, college basketball, high school basketball, which I specialize in Georgia. But I'm glad to be able to talk with you guys and talk some hoops. It's an exciting time of year.
Yeah, it is. It seems like we're about to get into basketball February, like what I like to call it, because pretty much after the Super Bowl, all there is NBA and college basketball.
You're right about that. Yeah, we got one last hurrah with the Patriots, and they're playing those Eagles, huh? So after that, we can finally put football to rest, and we'll focus solely on basketball, and that's when things get interesting. I like that March Madness, February frenzy with the high school sports. So it gets very exciting very quickly down the stretch here.
So they call it in high school February frenzy.
That's what I kind of coined the phrase.
Gotcha.
And I try and do a thing on my website, kind of like March Madness. Everybody loves filling out brackets for college basketball, but I brought that same thing to high school basketball. So I said, hey, if you want to fill out a Class 7A bracket, Class 6A bracket, here are the brackets. Just send them my way, and we'll score up the points, and whoever wins gets a nice shout-out, and you get to be the guru of Georgia high school basketball for that particular classification for the year. So I try and make it as fun and as interactive as possible with the high school scene.
Gotcha. Well, let's talk some college hoops, because this week nationally was a very interesting week and a pretty big week in college basketball, just with the two marquee games you had on Monday, North Carolina going to Blacksburg and Virginia Tech getting that huge upset. And then you also had on Tuesday night Kansas and Oklahoma. And it seemed like with that game, that was pretty much the three clinic. If you're a young kid and you want to achieve at basketball and especially shooting that three shot, it seemed like that was the game to watch to learn how to shoot the three-point basket. But what were your impressions about those games?
Well, like you said, three-pointers, that's definitely in vogue right now. It all kind of started with Steph Curry at the NBA level when he was flame-throwing those threes, and now everybody wants it's a slam dunk or a three-pointer. Those are the two hottest things for kids growing up. But, yeah, you saw it, Kansas. They hit 10 threes, but they lost. And Oklahoma, I hear they got a pretty special player in Trae Young. He's been taking the world by storm. He had 26 points, 9 assists in that game, and a couple people say he needs to get a little better with his shot decision and his passing skill. Sometimes he likes to gamble a little bit, but that was a huge win for Oklahoma. And Kansas is always one of those teams that it's a blue blood team. They're always really good, but especially come March, that's a scary team if you try and pick them to go all the way in your bracket, because Kansas, they just always somehow find a way to come up just a little bit short. and they came up short against Oklahoma. And then Virginia Tech, you mentioned it, very, very impressive. And Virginia Tech, if you're a fan of Georgia high school basketball at all, they got another big time impact player that's going to be coming in, Landers Nolly from Langston Hughes High School. He is a state champion.
Really interesting.
Yes, he is averaging 32 points per game. He's the best player in Georgia, but he was actually snubbed from the McDonald's All-American team for the selection this year, which is pretty crazy. But he is as good as it gets, a 6'7" wing, has about 4 or 5 50-point games in his career, has a handful of games of over 10 threes in a game. He is as legit as it gets, the best scorer in the state of Georgia, and he is definitely going to make an immediate impact for Virginia Tech. So Buzz Williams has a lot of talent coming in there, and he's got a guy that he can really build around over the next couple of years if he doesn't become another one and done.
Now, I want to ask you about Trae Young because I was watching SportsCenter, and they showed Jay Billis talking about him, and he said something very interesting, that Trae Young's like a Maserati. He only knows how to go fast. He doesn't know how to go slow in those residential areas. Would you say that's a fair assessment to his game? And also, do you think that he is going to be, when he goes to the next level, going to be in that same kind of category with Steph Curry, being a short, undersized guy, but he can always hit from that three-point line?
Yeah, as the kids say, he's all gas, no brakes. Yes, he's a road runner out there, and he does everything, and he puts his shots up, and he knows that he's carrying that team. If you're leading the nation in scoring with over 30 points a game, and you're right up top at assists as well with 9.6 assists per game, he's got an extremely high usage rate. So they put the ball in his hands, and they let him go. And when you have the ball in your hands, pretty much every single play, of course, as a point guard, but when you're asked to score and facilitate, you're going to have some mistakes, and that's playing fast, but that's also just having the ball in your hands so many times. You have so many opportunities to make great plays, but also you have opportunities to make bad plays, and he's averaging over 5 turnovers per game, so that just goes along with it, cutting that turnover to assist ratio. It's not the best in the nation, but I think he's going to make an impact wherever he goes in the NBA draft. You said it. It's tough to do that. You can't just come in. How many freshmen come in and average 30 points and 9 assists? That's rarefied air right there. So whoever grabs him in the draft, I think you're going to get an explosive player, someone that's going to put butts in seats, especially if you're a bad team, maybe the Hawks or something like that. Who knows? But he's got a very, very good talent, and he can shoot that three ball, and that translates extremely well to the next level.
This might sound like a dumb question, but for people that I'm just asking this question for people that aren't really paying too much attention to college basketball. Do you think Trae Young is a one and done?
Yeah, I would say he has to be. I mean, we just read off those stat lines. Where do you go from there? How do you improve from 30 points and 9 assists as a freshman? There's not much more room to get better than that. That's pretty much the peak of things. And I mean, if you got to sell your stock when it's high. And if you want to sell stock when it's high right now, I don't know if it can get much higher. You want to take that chance and get into the NBA draft. He's obviously going to end up being a NBA lottery pick. I don't know if he's going to be the number one pick in the draft, but hey, get paid. You did what you had to do in college, and you don't want to risk anything with injuries or anything like that playing at the collegiate level. You've done everything you had to do at Oklahoma, so I think it's time for him to move on. He's dominated the college level.
Now, I just want to know about this game with Kansas and Oklahoma, because both these teams are probably going to be the premier teams through the rest of the season in the Big 12. Do you think that you're going to see these two teams play in the Big 12 tournament for the championship game?
Well, there's a ton of great teams in the Big 12 this year for sure, and a team that I think is, they've been ranked very highly and they've gotten a lot of respect this year, but West Virginia is going to be a major pain with that pressure defense. They press all over the place. Coach Huggins has a guy in Javon Carter who I feel like has been there for about 7 or 8 years. He looks like he's about 34, 35 years old, but he is the heart and soul of that defense. He's defensive player of the year, averages over 3 steals a game, 17 points per game. He's one of those classic great college guards. I don't know if he's going to translate all the way into the NBA level, but I'm sure he's going to get some looks just because he's so tenacious and he is one of those veteran senior guards. So he's a winner. He's won his entire career at West Virginia, Javon Carter, and I think they're going to be a very tough out. So I would not be surprised to see West Virginia playing for that conference tournament title.
Really interesting, yeah, because it's looking like West Virginia is a dark horse, but they always seem to have good teams. Usually with college basketball, you usually have storylines coming out with because at this time of year we're usually not talking about just one standout freshman. We're usually talking about 3 or 5 guys on Kentucky that look like they're all going to be first rounders, but it doesn't seem like we have that this year. There has been a lot of noise in coming out of Durham, North Carolina, in Duke's camp right now. Just what do you think of that? Because it just seems like it's so far been a different college basketball season than what people are used to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure didn't Kentucky, they just dropped out of the polls I saw for the first time in a very, very, very long time. And Calipari's always had all those studs and all these 5-star guys, and they had, a respectable record at 15-5, and they're in 3rd place in the SEC, trailing Auburn, who's 18-2, and it's really been a upstart team that lost to Alabama. It's a tough way to lose your first conference game, but Kentucky, a team that you're always able to pencil in there for a nice deep run with all that young talent. It definitely hasn't come to fruition yet, but at the end of the day, when you have all that talent on the roster, they're going to be a very scary team come the tournament. That's a team you're not going to want to see because who knows, they could put it together for a 4 or 5 game stretch and they can make some noise. And then if you're looking at Duke's had some losses in ACC play. They've gotten clipped. They won a close game just recently. They beat Miami, which was a nip and tuck game, and then they pulled away from Wake Forest. But they haven't been as dominant as you would expect. But Marvin Bagley, he's been the real deal. He's 21-11, and you got Grayson Allen's been there, and Wendell Carter from Pace Academy here in Georgia. He's already averaging close to a double-double and making his presence felt. So Duke is a very good team, but at the end of the day, they're going to have to get past teams like Virginia, who is number 2 in the nation, the best defense in the nation, 8-0 in the conference. Now, they never really translate all that well to the tournament time because they struggle to score and they'll get beat by someone like a Michigan State, or then Florida really ran them out of the gym in embarrassing fashion last year. But Virginia's a team to beat right now in the ACC, and coming up on the 27th, just in 2 days here as we record on the 25th, Virginia is traveling to Duke, so that is going to be a monster game. It looks like
that will be, wow.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun game, and we'll see, can Virginia slow down Duke's outstanding freshman class and, of course, Grayson Allen.
Right. I think it's always interesting with CBS in general, it seems like, because they're all over SEC football, and they always seem to pick up those big ACC games. But speaking of the ACC, like you're saying, that matchup with Virginia and Duke, because Virginia is the 2nd team in the nation last time I checked. And also, too, I know we talked about this at the top of the show about Virginia Tech and North Carolina. Do you feel like Virginia Tech is going to be a legitimate team, or is this kind of one of their, splash in the pool type wins that they beat a huge team and have huge momentum and they just don't do anything with it the rest of the season? Also, too, do you think North Carolina is just going through a hangover from their national championship win from last year?
Yeah, I think Virginia Tech's pretty much what their record says right now. 14-6, kind of struggling ACC play, 3-4, so they're near the bottom of the polls. But Virginia Tech's going to be a dangerous team. I mean, they lost at Louisville 94-86. They lost against a pretty good Florida State team 91-82. So they play these teams pretty close. They lost at Kentucky when Kentucky was quote-unquote good back then, 93-86. So they have momentum with that win against North Carolina. It's going to be hard to carry that over because they're going to be at Notre Dame, and Notre Dame is a very good program, which is near the top of the polls there. Well, they're 13-7. They're struggling a little bit this year, but they've had some injuries, and once Notre Dame's healthy. But Virginia Tech, I don't know if they're going to make the tournament this year. They're going to be one of those teams that are on the bubble that are going to need a couple more wins, like that win against North Carolina. But they're going to be a tough out in the ACC tournament. And then North Carolina, yeah, they've had some tough losses. I mean, at Florida State by 1, to Virginia by 12, most recently at Virginia Tech. The one stinker there was a 4-point loss to Wofford, which was not very good. But you know, Roy Williams, they got talent over there. They got big men. They got May inside, who's been having a great year after hitting that shot. So they got a lot of pieces there. Joel Berry is very good. Theo Pinson's a defensive stopper. North Carolina will be fine. I don't know if they're going to win the ACC this year, but they're always going to be in contention for those top 3-4 spots there. And they're ranked number 10 in the nation, so I wouldn't panic too much if I'm a Tar Heel fan.
Mm-hmm. Do you think Virginia is a legitimate team this year, and do you think that they can go deep into the national tournament?
I mean, they've done this before. I've followed this program very closely the past couple of years, and even before that. Now they finally have a guy that can put the ball in the basket. Kyle Guy, he's a good scorer. He's a 3-point shooter. Devin Hall is really taking his time to develop into a very solid guard for him. At the end of the day, we know they're going to play great defense, but in years past, especially in the tournament, they have had those nightmarish, 6-minute, 7-minute scoreless droughts, and that's been their bugaboo, and that has sealed their fate. Now, I don't think they're going to get blown out like they did last year against Florida. I believe that was in the second round there. They just got absolutely just crushed. They could not put the ball in the basket. I think Virginia's legit. It depends on where they're going to end up with, what type of teams. It's all about matchups, of course, when you get to a tournament. But Virginia's a really good team. You're going to have to really be able to shoot the ball against them. And I think they do have enough offense to take a deep run. I don't know if they're going to win a championship, but a Final Four appearance would not be out of the question for Virginia.
Now, looking at the rankings, because I just pulled it up on my computer, I see Villanova is right now the king of the hill in college basketball. Do you feel like their team is legit? Because I know they won the championship a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it looks like they got 6 players scoring in double figures right now, and out of those 6 players, 5 of them are shooting over 41% from 3, and we know how important the 3-ball is throughout the season, and most definitely in the tournament, because if you get hot and you get a guy that strokes 6 threes in a game, I mean, 6 times 3, I think that's 18 points right there. That's a big boost. So, yeah, they're a very experienced team. They got guys like Jalen Brunson who's been there before, been there, done that. They've won big games. And Jay Wright, he knows how to win come March. So Villanova, I think they're legit. They had that one misstep against Butler, but they've been rolling ever since, and they are going to be a team to beat, and they have that target on their back, and they're most likely going to wrap up a number 1 seed unless things go horribly wrong for them. But the Wildcats are definitely one of those favorites to try and get back there and win another championship.
Yeah, it seems like from here on out, looking at the schedule, that they should be undefeated until they have to play Georgetown. Do you think Georgetown is going to give them fits at all?
I don't know. Their first meeting, just looking at it, they went to Georgetown and they blew them out by 32, 88 to 56. Georgetown, they're definitely rebuilding that Patrick Ewing there on the sideline. He's just trying to rebuild this culture to what it was when he played back in the day. So it's going to take some time. I think Villanova's just been there, done that. They've seen everything. I mean, they always beat Xavier. That's probably going to be one of their toughest games. They got Butler and then at Xavier on the 17th of February coming down the stretch. But like you said, all those other games are going to be heavy favorites, and it's going to take a great shooting night for an opponent to knock them off.
Mm-hmm. Now, I just want to switch gears over to I think what a lot of our listeners are interested in, and that's in the SEC. And the SEC obviously is a heavy football conference, and college basketball pretty much just plays second fiddle to the football programs. But now that football is over, there's a lot of fan bases interested, and one of those teams that had a terrible year in football is now having a really good year in basketball, and that's the University of Florida. So, and also too, the University of Auburn has creeped in there, and usually that's not a traditional school when you talk about basketball, but it seems like Bruce Pearl has righted the ship, and but still NCAA sanctions loom over those programs. So, Sean, can you just talk to me about Florida and Auburn's programs, and where do you think they're headed?
Yeah, Florida, they are, they're doing okay. They're not as what they were last year. They're 14-6 right now, but that's a team with an experienced backcourt. You got Jalen Hudson. You got Chris Chizoza, who's been good. He's averaging 6 assists per game. Another senior. Then they have this, who was this foreigner that came over, one of those like senior transfers, I believe, Igor Kulevchov. That's probably
an interesting name.
Yeah, from Russia, and he can play. It looks like it's his fourth school. Was at Rice. I think maybe Arizona State before that. I can't tell what that ASU stands for, but yeah, he's very important. He's brought some swagger. He can shoot the three ball. He's leading them in rebounds with 7 a game. So Florida's, like I said, it's, in basketball, you definitely want to peak at the right time. Who cares about the wins you have in November, December? All that matters is when you're really earning that money as a head coach, sadly not as a player, but come February and March, that's when people really pay attention to these games. So Florida has an opportunity to really get it going in the right direction. And Auburn, you're right about Bruce Pearl. He's as they say, a shady character.
Right.
He has definitely plucked talent, and he grabs most of his talent from the state of Georgia. You look at it, Bryce Brown leading them in scoring, 16 points per game. He's from Tucker. You look at Jared Harper, 13 points per game, the point guard. He is from Pebblebrook. Anthony McLemore, he is from Worth County, Georgia. Chuma Okiki, a freshman, he is from Westlake. He was the player of the year, Mr. Georgia basketball in Georgia last year. Davion Mitchell, another Georgia kid that won a state title at Liberty County. So Bruce Pearl is building his program. His top players mostly are all coming from the state of Georgia. So you'll see him at any tournament, any big tournament in the state of Georgia, just sitting there posted up, and he gets what he wants. I don't know how he does it, but he is turning Auburn into a basketball school at 18-2, and they are rolling right now.
Yeah. I guess it's really nice that your campus is 2 hours from the Metroplex, so not a bad drive to get up here into the state of Georgia. Another school that I'm curious about is that made it to the Final Four that's in the SEC is the South Carolina Gamecocks, and right now they're off to a pretty rough start. And do you think that they can rebound and possibly get back into the tournament to make a run like they did last year?
It's going to be tough. They lost Darius Thornwell, who's with the Los Angeles Clippers now, and he was literally Mr. Everything for them. Tough as nails, defended, could score the ball, did a lot of good stuff for him now. South Carolina's coming off a 77-72 win at Florida, so they have a little bit of momentum. They won 3 of their last 4 games. But, yeah, it's going to be an uphill battle for them. The SEC, if you're looking historically speaking, I guess the past couple of years it's been a little bit better, but the SEC's not ever really been considered much of a quote-unquote basketball conference outside of Kentucky, who is really just always taking care of their business, and you have a couple teams that'll pop up here and there and be competitive and make a couple runs like last year with South Carolina, but I think it's going to be tough for them. They lost their senior leader. They have some losses this year to Illinois State by 4. They lost to Temple by 16. Got blown out by Clemson by 16. So it's been kind of tough. They're sitting at 4-4 in the conference, so they're right in the middle of the pack. And some of those guys on that roster, they were part of that run last year, so they know when to turn it up a notch when they need to. But without Thornwell, I think that's going to hurt their chances. But they could get a little hot, and they'll have to play their way onto the bubble. But I think it's a little bit of a long shot right now.
Right. Now, I just want to switch gears, and I want to talk about the locals here in the Atlanta area. And I first want to start off with Georgia State. Georgia State with Ron Hunter has always seemed to be very competitive, and it seemed like he inherited that program from pretty much had nothing there, and they built it into something, making a national tournament appearance, making it into the second round. But Georgia State seems to be off to a really good start at the beginning of the year. And I just want to know, Kyle, what are your expectations for Georgia State?
I'm glad you asked, because if we're looking at it not only this year, but maybe in the long-term future, you could probably say Georgia has an argument as well, because they just have a bunch of 2019 kids that just committed. Ashton Hagen's #1 point guard in the nation, Elias King, a 4-star 6'7" wing. But I think Georgia State is in the best position to become the best team in the state of Georgia and really turn into one of those mid-major powerhouse programs. They're 14-6 right now in the Sun Belt, but they have so much talent. And when they got Sharman White, who won 7 state titles at Miller Grove in the state of Georgia, they brought him onto the staff to be an assistant last year. They have just started to suck up all the talent in the state of Georgia. Not those 5-star superstars, but pretty much everything beneath it. And that's how they got a guy like DeMarcus Simons. He has been so good, 21 points per game, 5 rebounds, just under 5 assists. He came from Gainesville. He has been phenomenal, only a sophomore. If he stays all 4 years, watch out, because he's going to be there. They have guys like Kane Williams, who's seen a little bit of minutes this year. He's a very athletic point guard from South Paulding. He's good. Malik Benley came from Jenkins. He's going to be a senior next year, I believe. He's averaging 10 points per game. But you have to be super excited, because they have a kid named Nelson Phillips that is coming to Georgia State next year. And if he teams up with DeMarcus Simons, this Georgia State team is a team that's going to have to start garnering votes in the top 25, because Nelson Phillips from Warner Robins is that good. He is a high major player, and he is going to be playing in the Sun Belt with DeMarcus Simons, who is another guy who has high major talent, who was originally going to, I think it was Mississippi State, but then there was a coaching change, and he fell into Georgia State's lap. You pair Nelson Phillips, a 6'5", smooth as silk wing that can score from all over, an electric athlete, with Simons, this Georgia State team can really, really, really take off. I am in love with the roster they are building. They are going to be something special if Simons does not try and go pro soon. If he just plays his all 4 years and you let everybody beneath him age properly, this Georgia State team is going to be something fierce. They are going to be a powerhouse, especially in the Sun Belt Conference.
Really, that's really interesting stuff, because it seems like with the 3 local teams, it seems like Georgia State has their house together. Now, do you feel like they could be a team like a Butler or you or that school from Richmond that I for some reason it's escaping my mind, that made a run in the national championship? In the national tournament. Can Georgia State get to that level?
I think they can. If Simon stays, I think next year you're just seeing the baby steps of it this year. You're seeing, okay, they're going to end up with over 20 wins. I feel like they should be able to win the conference tournament this year. I don't know if they'll do it, but they're going to be right in the thick of things. But if it's not this year, next year you're really going to see it rolling with some big-time momentum. But the time Simon is a senior, so not next year, but the year after that, and they continue to recruit Georgia, they are going to be a force, and they're going to be a team that's going to not only make the NCAA tournament, but they're going to be a team that's going to win at least a game in that tournament, and they are going to be scary, because they are just loading up with Atlanta talent and surrounding places with good pieces. I really think this team has a chance to be special. You're just going to see the baby steps of it this year. Next year, you're going to see a little bit more. But if everybody stays there, in 2 years, Georgia State is going to be a team you do not want to see in March Madness. They are going to be loaded.
Wow, really, really interesting. Yeah, but that's really good to hear. I guess you gotta go over to Georgia State, make it out some games. But speaking of the other locals, Tech and Georgia have just really struggled recently. I want to start off with Georgia Tech and Josh Pastner. So far, what do you think? How has he done as a head coach? And because obviously the big challenge with Georgia Tech is trying to convince a lot of these local guys to stay home. And I know this is kind of your area of expertise is recruiting. So I just want to know, since he hasn't been that successful at it, is it the academic side of Georgia Tech that's scaring away recruits?
I don't know. It might be. It's something like that. I mean, when Pastor came in there, I mean, he had a great year last year, and he did a pretty decent job of hitting the pavement, and you could see him at a lot of gyms getting guys. But this year has been pretty close to disastrous. 10-10. You get your lead assistant, one of your lead assistants. Daryl LeBerry's been suspended. I don't know if he's been reinstated for paying players, paying Josh Okogie, who came from Shiloh in Gwinnett County. He's your best player, but he was even dinged up this year and missed a lot of time. So you feel good about him and what he's going to end up being down the stretch with 2 more years of eligibility after this season. But other than that, it's not been really good at Georgia Tech, and they get a couple guys here and there. I mean, they haven't done too much as far as Georgia guys. They got Evan Cole, who was originally going to North Carolina. I think it was Wilmington, but after a coaching change, he ended up going to Georgia Tech, and I think Evan Cole from South Forsyth, I think he's a little bit over his head right now. I think he would have been a very good fit at like a Kennesaw State, a Georgia State, a little bit lower, but at the ACC level, he's got to develop some more. I think he had a really good chance of making a major impact at that lower level, but he wanted to go to the ACC, and I don't know if it's a fit right now. He's averaging 1 point per game, playing 7 minutes, and then Evan Jester was pretty much a walk-on from Sandy Creek, another 6'7" guy who's pretty much just there for the education, but is a good a pretty good option for a walk-on player. But yeah, Georgia Tech, I don't know. I don't feel great about them. And they haven't really gotten anybody that's going to be a senior this year from the state of Georgia, unless someone's slipping my mind off the top of my head. But they don't have much coming in as far as talent from at least a Georgia perspective. So Georgia Tech, they do have some work to get done, and they kind of missed on Ty Fagan. They wanted to offer him from Upson Lee, but he instead has committed to Middle Tennessee State, so they kind of missed on him. And I think Pastor's kicking himself just a little bit.
Speaking of over your head, do you feel like Josh Pastner is over his head right now? Because going into the season, it really wasn't that great. You lost to in-state rival Georgia, and then you had that huge win against Notre Dame, and then it was just pretty much downhill from there so far. So do you feel like that because to me, just my observation, it didn't seem like Pastner was really ready for the ACC, and especially playing, especially coaching at a place like Georgia Tech, that the expectations can be a little bit ridiculous. And even though they haven't won anything significant in the past couple of years, but still that expectation is there, and they put together a pretty tough schedule, non-conference, and do you think that this was the best time to try to be a head coach at Georgia Tech?
I think he'll be okay. I mean, the talent on the roster isn't really there. He's got to pick up in recruiting. I know he's a very charismatic guy, and he's usually a really good recruiter, but you mentioned it earlier. The academics might be a little bit of a hindrance. When he was at Memphis, I'm pretty sure Memphis is not the academic prestigious college that Georgia Tech is. So he probably had a little more wiggle room to get the players he wanted. So getting these guys accepted, it's not the hugest deal, but it is something to really think about with tough classes like that. But yeah, they've lost 3 in a row, and they're tough. I mean, they had that god awful terrible Grambling loss, 64-63, one of the worst losses in ACC history. I think all the pundits were trying to say. So that's certainly not the way you'd want to kick off your season. Just about 6 games into the year, you have a historically bad loss. That's not good, but I think he'll be okay. He's got to hit the ground running and get some recruits to put around Josh Okogie, who is a very talented player. If he can get some recruits, he's going to have to pick it up this year, but if he can get some guys to put around him, I think they'll be fine. They got Mike DeVoe, who's coming out of Orlando, Florida, who's rated a 4-star point guard. I think Georgia Tech fans will be very excited about him. And they got a couple other guys, but it all starts with recruiting. And if he can get his way, I think Georgia Tech will be okay. I think they're a little better than this 10-10 mark right now. That's not good considering how I think Passion won ACC Coach of the Year with what he did, taking a deep run, and I guess it was the NIT last year. But he'll be okay. It's just it's a kind of like a sophomore slump for him, I'd say.
Right. Right. That's an interesting point. And but going to the other side of the city in Athens, Georgia, you have a little bit of the same story, better record, but at the same time, losing recently to Arkansas, and then having just an embarrassing loss against Auburn, even though Auburn's doing really well, but just having a 14-point lead just slip away there at the end has to be really devastating for this Georgia team. So, what do you take away with Georgia so far?
You know what? The record's not what you want it to be, 12-7. You said that they blew a massive lead against Auburn, and that could have been a big-time resume building win for them when you're trying to get into the tournament. So they lost that one, and then they lose. They have a hangover effect from that and lose to Arkansas 80-77, which is another tough loss for them. So Georgia's near that bottom of the standings. But, I mean, they got Yante Mayton. He's everything for them. And then outside of that, you kind of got to scrap your way for some points. You got Turtle Jackson, who's from Athens Christian here in Georgia, who's their second leading scorer. Derek Bede, another big post player from Pebblebrook, who's done a good job anchoring the paint for him. But that's pretty much it. Rayshawn Hammond, he's from Norcross, a freshman. He's given them some good moments here and there. He's averaging 6 points and 5 rebounds. But Georgia, I think you got to be patient with them. Fox has a big-time recruiting class coming in. Amanzi Nugamezi, a big-time 6'8" post player that can go inside and outside from Johnson, Savannah. He will be on campus next year. Along with him, JoJo Toppin, more of an upside guy from Norcross, a very bouncy 6'6" wing. But, his 2019 class that he's got committed right now, that's probably going to save him from ever getting fired before that, because he's got number one Ashton Higgins, who's from Newton County. He's averaging close to a triple-double on the year. He's the best point guard in the nation in this classification. So that is insane to get him staying at home at Georgia. Then you got Elias King as well, 6'7" guard from Shiloh. So be patient, Bulldogs fans. You got some big-time major help coming your way. You're just going to have to hold on tight. This year might not be what you want it to be, but be patient. Wait till Ashton Higgins gets on campus and let Coach Fox unleash him on the rest of the SEC, and Georgia will have a very good opportunity to build something special in those 3 or 4 years, or depending on how good Ashton Higgins does, it might be a one-and-done situation, but they're going to have a lot of talent over there in Athens.
So just be patient.
Yes, please be patient. I think Coach Fox, he's a good guy. He doesn't do any of that shady business. He tries to align himself with good people, and he's not willing to sell his soul to get some of these guys. So you got to be very happy about that. And with that being said, that's a huge home run to get Ashton Higgins to commit now. We got to see if he'll sign. He's got another year of high school basketball to go, but great job by Coach Mark Fox and staff.
Right, right. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, Coach Mark Fox is a really nice guy. Because I ran into him at a Georgia football game, and yeah, really nice guy to meet if you ever get the opportunity to. But so just hang on to one more year and just one more recruiting cycle, and you feel like the Dogs are gonna right the ship. That's very interesting. Also, I've been always curious about this since recruiting is right now something that's your specialty right now, and I just want to know, just from a recruiting standpoint, since you know the state of Georgia well from a basketball perspective, it's always I've always wondered about why is it that the top elite talent always goes out of state and not even really considering the local schools. I can understand from a win-loss perspective, but you would at least think that they could do better, the local teams can do better in their home state. And I've kind of come down to an opinion of, well, I think it's a basketball culture because if you think about it from a football standpoint, a lot of guys will just stay in this region of the Southeast because they know that they're committing to that school for at least 3 years at the most. But it's like with basketball, since you have this one and done deal that you only have to stay at a school, if you're good enough to go to that next level for 1 year, that it seems like it's fine if you go anywhere else around the country. But it seemed like just from a standpoint, from a football standpoint and from a basketball standpoint, that it seems like guys on the football side usually want to stay closer to home if they can. But it seems like in college basketball, since if you're good enough to go to the NBA, that it really doesn't matter where you go, that it's only just 1 year temporary thing.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, especially when you're talking about the top players. I mean, you could say it for any state when it's that top, like, 5% where they're, like, these big-time blue-chip stars and stuff like that. These guys have worked super hard. Like, I'm a take, like, Wendell Carter, who's at Duke now. I've worked my way into becoming a 5-star player. I am highly sought after. I'm a top 5 player in the nation. I'm working my butt off. Do I want to go to a Georgia or a Georgia Tech that has no prestige, not a very good program, or am I going to go to a Duke? I mean, you can understand it from that side of things. Like, I've built myself into this high-profile player. I want to play at the best program to go along with my best talents. I don't want to go to a Georgia or a Georgia Tech and have that burden on. Everything's going to be on me. It's going to be very difficult, and I'm not going to be seen as much as I would be at a Duke. And then people are going to say, why the hell didn't he go to Duke if he's this good? And he ended up going locally, which, I mean, that's a tough situation for a Georgia or a Georgia Tech or just smaller schools in general. You hate that. You want to reel in that one big fish, and that's what Mark Fox just did with Ashton Hagans. They somehow got this big fish to reel him in. Now they got to wait for him to sign for, they got another year to go, but that is just such a home run to get someone like that who is just recruited by pretty much everyone in the nation, and to get him to stay, that's a great job. But yeah, it's tough. A lot of states will complain that their best players aren't staying in state, but Georgia State does a phenomenal job. They're going to be getting all those mid-major talent level guys. They're always going to fill the roster up with players from Georgia. And on the other side of that, on the other coin, you got a program that's doing a god-awful, terrible, horrible job, and that is Kennesaw State, who is 5-16. But if you're looking at teams that have a Division I program and are still active, Kennesaw State, they've been, I believe it's 13 years now. They have the second lowest winning percentage in the nation. So you can say Kennesaw State is the worst program in the nation, which is
Wow.
It's befuddling. It's horrendous because if you're looking geographically, Kennesaw State is probably in the best area in the state of Georgia, right?
Right.
Okay, if you love the city, okay, you're about 20 minutes from the city. If you don't like the city, you're about 20 minutes outside of the city. You don't have to deal with it. It's such a great campus. It's so good. I went to school there, but when you got people in power that just don't have any vision and don't know what they're doing, I've heard so many stories about them alienating all these players from Georgia, saying the stupidest stuff to them. We got one kid that's going to Old Dominion, 6'8" kid, but he was told, well, we only recruit high major players, and if he was 2 inches taller, we would recruit him. Beggars can't be choosers. Beggars can't be choosers. You got a horrible team. You only got about 2 guys on the roster from the state of Georgia, and of course, out of those 2 guys, the one kid on your roster who's from Cherokee County, where I'm from, who wasn't super highly, sought after prospect coming out. He is now like the school's all-time leading three-point shooter, and he led the nation in three-point shooting. It's so easy to find these guys, but they have no vision. They just don't know what they're doing. They can't recruit the state of Georgia. You just look at it, 2-3 years ago, Yonel Brown played at Berkmar, coming out of Gwinnett County. He was about a 5'10" guard who was under-recruited, but he went to Kennesaw State, and now he's like a top 5 leading scorer in school history. So you're telling me you can't find undersized players like that all over the state of Georgia? All Kennesaw has to do is recruit in a 1-hour radius, circle the map, go 1-hour radius around Kennesaw State, go to Gwinnett County schools, Fulton County schools, Cobb County schools. You will load up. You're in the A-Sun. You're not in the ACC. You don't need 5-star players. You can find very, very good players in the state of Georgia, but instead they want to go to Massachusetts. They want to go to Serbia. They want to go overseas. You can't build a pipeline that way. You have to build inside out, not outside in. If you're a small school, you have to own your state and then grow it to your region, and then you go outside. How are you going to build a pipeline with Serbia? That's not going to work. If you get a kid from a Cobb County school, and maybe he doesn't work out, maybe he's just a role player for 4 years, well, it might not have been a slam dunk for you, but you built the pipeline with that specific school, and then maybe 2 years later from that point on, hey, remember when I recruited your guy? I have a good rapport with that head coach now. You're still a coach at that high school, and now, well, I can vouch for Kennesaw State and say, well, they treated my guy very well. Hey, son, speaking of my player here, hey, that's a really good school. I would like for you to think about actually going to Kennesaw State because I can vouch for them, and they treated so-and-so who graduated 4 years before you really well. This is a school you want to look into. But Kennesaw State, for some reason, they don't understand that, and that's why they've been a laughing stock in Georgia, and they've alienated college coaches and players all throughout the state of Georgia. And again, it sucks. I got Al Skinner, who was a national coach of the year at Boston College, won a ton of games, but all his pipeline, all his stuff is in northeast USA, talking about Massachusetts and stuff. He has no connection to anything in the state of Georgia. They have nobody that can recruit the state of Georgia. And I hate to say it, but it might be time to drain the swamp. You need to hire someone like a Sherman White, who's at Georgia State now. He's done wonders as an assistant. You need somebody with super strong ties to Georgia high school basketball that can build a pipeline and build something and build it into something special, because there is no reason Kennesaw State, who has never been 500, they have never been 500 in 12 or 13 years of being a Division I program. They have never been 500. They have been a laughing stock. So for 13 years now, when is it going to change? When is it going to change? And that is my rant. If you can't tell, I'm a little passionate about it. It's just the same old bull crap every year, just playing with Division II players at the Division I level that have no business being there. And they are a very bad program, and they need some leadership and direction and some vision, and they need it fast, very quickly. They have a new AD that just got hired onto campus. Let's see if they can somehow shake it up and be more than just a great football school, because we saw what they did in football, it's only the second or third year, and they're already making a deep run into the college football playoffs and everything like that. Kennesaw State basketball, 13 years. What do you have to show for it? Not even one winning record.
Yeah. That sounds like an alumni that's going to pull his money soon.
Yeah, if I even had any money to give to him, I'm just doing and doing. That's what I do. I just had to get it out there. Kennesaw State. I mean, sometimes you got to hit the dog on the head with the newspaper to stop eating its own crap, and we're trying to do that with Kennesaw State. So fingers crossed they can finally get this thing moving in the right direction, please.
Okay. Yeah, just Kyle, before we close out here, just tell us about your website.
Oh, yeah. So sandyspiel.com, it's kind of a mouthful. If you just wanted to Google my name, you could probably find it, Kyle Sandy, Sandy like the beaches. SandySpiel.com. It's pretty much your one-stop shop for everything Georgia high school basketball. So I'll have game night recaps where I get stats from about 100 games across the state of Georgia, literally across the state from north, south, east, west, middle Georgia. It's not just Atlanta. So I'll have stats on there, boys and girls. I do the official state rankings for the teams, boys and girls as well. So if you wanted to find out who's the best team in the state of Georgia this year, you can just visit SandySpiel.com and you'll get a really good estimate of who's doing what and who's really making some noise. Also have even like player rankings for this 2018 class, looking for seniors, a list of great seniors, go out to games as well, do game stories, and we even have our own podcast, the Spielin' and Dealin' podcast, which just came out today. We had our 41st episode. I am posting online, so you can find that on Podbean or iTunes. But yeah, just pretty much everything Georgia high school basketball. I try and feed it to you as raw and as unfiltered and as accurate as possible on SandySpiel.com. I try to no bias here, try and just tell it how it is, and sometimes that ruffles some feathers, but I think information is power, and I try and get that power out to the people.
Right. Now, if people that listen to the show want to get in touch with you, what's the best way they can contact you?
On Twitter, you can find me at Kyle Sandy 355, or also be all formal. You could find me on Gmail. Send me an email at KyleSandy355 at gmail.com. Those are probably your two most effective ways to reach out to me. And or if you're a big Facebook person, Sandy Spiel has its own Facebook page, and you can find me that way. But email and Twitter would be the most accurate and most efficient way to get in touch with me.
All right. Well, thank you, Kyle, for being on the show today.
Again, I just want to thank Kyle Sandy for coming on the show today. Gave a lot of interesting college basketball analysis, and if you want to comment about the show, be sure to leave that in the comment section, or if you have a question for Sandy, be sure to leave that in the comment section as well. And if you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to hit the like button, because that like button goes a long way. Also, too, if you want to support the podcast, we are on GoFundMe. I'll put the link to that page in the description, so it'd be awesome if you can help us out here. And but be sure to check back with us for other podcasts, and be sure to check out fansfavoritefan.com. Got a lot of great NBA and college articles, and also some NFL content on the website right now, so be sure to check those things out and have an awesome day.